This is the Internet Court of Truth and Lies. The purpose is if you've got something in the media that you think is a lie, or something in the media that you think is the truth, you can take it to a group of up to 8 jurors and dissect your claim about whether it's true or a lie as answers to verdict questions, then have each of the jurors do the same thing. Optionally, you can have a video trial, which is what this is. At the end of the opportunity for people to look at your claims and perhaps file their own verdicts, you can get together of what they thought about what you thought. And most all the time, it's really neat because it tells you things that you had not thought of before, and gives you some perspective on how other people think that's different than the way you think. And they also see this. So everybody's participating in the thing the Internet Court of Truth and Lies is. Intended to be a tool for social media. Instead of doing a wild comment on somebody's statement, you can open a court case, get 8 people in, and then make your case about what you thought about what that guy's post was. Everybody's going to have their own version of the truth and lies, but at least everybody's heard the other people. So it's hard to just bully people around in an environment like that. That's called enforced moderated dialogue. And in fact, if you look at the U.S. Constitution, you'll see that that's their trick. For each of the branches of government, House, the Senate, the courts, the executive, there is written in the Constitution the manner of dialogue among people that's permitted in order to wield power and so forth and so on. Mankind has known for a long time that with structured dialogue, you can get things done. Whereas if people are just holding their pitchforks and screaming at each other and so forth and so on, they don't work very well. The Internet Court of Truth and Lies is to create a place where instead of blasting people with comments and blasting people with posts, people can get together and hear what each other believe in a structured environment where, they can't get away with smug statements because it's not acceptable. That's what this is. This trial is on George Washington's farewell address. I've done another trial that's a shorter version of this address. This is my first draft of taking his fairly long farewell address and shortening it. In this summary, it's George Washington's own words. So these are not my words. It's also comprehensive in the sense that it covers at least a little bit of everything that George Washington covers in his address. He spent something like 2 years writing this address. He did give the address at the end of his presidency. I can't remember to who. It was probably to Congress. It was printed. You can go on the line and see the pamphlets that have his farewell address in it. I would argue the main theme of his farewell address is very simple. His farewell address is how do you preserve freedom to do what they want? And his first line is within the law and within established habits or norms. You can do what you want. The government and the U.S. Constitution is designed for that. And what George Washington realized early on, I'm sure this was understood at the time, is the problem is people will lie. And people will lie divisively and attempt to gain power and so forth and so on by bad-mouthing other people. And you can't make a law that says you can't do that. That's what he actually says in this farewell address. He says, there's a place here where we cannot make a law. You cannot establish a norm This has to be done by the people themselves. Please listen to what I say, and please don't do what I tell you not to do, because you will lose your liberty. We know historically this is what will happen. If we could have made a government that guaranteed that this would never happen, we would have, but then you would have lost so much liberty. It would have been horrible. How do you keep freedom to have to take some responsibility for it? That's what this thing's about. Since I'm the one who wrote this summary from what he said, I'll take you through the summary a little bit really fast to give you an idea. The first quote I've got from him is, "Here, perhaps I ought to stop." So he had written a couple of lines before this where he said, "I'm so happy to leave, and y'all have a great government. Have a good time. Goodbye." Then he says, "Here, perhaps I ought to stop." But your welfare urged me to offer the result of much reflection, which appear to me all important to the permanency of our nation. They believed, and they were right, that this Constitution would hold up for a very long time. The unity of government is now dear to you. It's the main pillar of your real independence, freedom, support of your home, your peace abroad. Remember, they were fighting the British and in wars with others as well. Your safety, your prosperity, that very liberty which you so highly prize. He's talking to Americans and he's saying, it's the unity of the government that's going to bring this about. Then he states, from different quarters, many artifices, which are lies and misinformation, disinformation, will be employed to weaken your minds. But he makes the real serious statement here that the reason they can't control it, covertly and insidiously directed. No hope for writing a law. People will get around the laws and they will do it anyway if they're going to do it. It's an infinite moment that you should properly estimate the immense value of your national union to your happiness. He's saying the only way this will work is that it's one body, it's one union of people. And you should watch for its preservation with jealous anxiety, indignantly frowning upon the first dawning of every attempt to alienate any portion of our country from the rest. Don't listen to divisive liars. When people start bad-mouthing other people, you've got a problem, and it's up to them not to do it. They said, we can't stop you, but we can tell you if you do it, you will lose the country. You will lose your liberty, because the alternative is dictatorship. So with slight shades of difference, you have the same religion, manners, habits, and political principles. You have in common cause fought and triumphed together. The independence and liberty you possess are the work of joint councils and joint efforts, of common dangers, sufferings, and successes. Or what he's saying is, by and large, everybody is basically the same. Get over deciding that somebody else is evil. These considerations powerfully guard and preserve the union of the whole. I mentioned something about the North and the South. The reason I put this in was the first thing he says is going to break up in the country is between the North and the South. He was right. 60 years later, there was the Civil War. He said, please don't do that. Every part of the country must derive from the Union an exemption of those brawls and wars between themselves, which so frequently afflict neighboring countries. This is one country. There will always be reason to distrust the patriotism of those. He means Patriots of Liberty. He's very explicit about that. It isn't patriotism to your country, it's your patriotism to liberty. Your patriotism of those who in any quarter may endeavor to weaken the bands of the government, where the bands are the division of power, the laws, the norms that the government establishes. It occurs as a matter of serious concern to misrepresent the opinions and aims of other districts. In other words, no misinformation, no disinformation, please. You cannot shield yourselves too much against the jealousies and heartburnings which spring from these misrepresentations. They tend to render alien to each other who ought to be bound together by fraternal affection. Never vote for or promote a divisive liar. To the efficacy and permanency of your union, government of the whole is indispensable. No alliances, however strict, between the parts of any parts of the country can be an adequate substitute. Just because you can form alliances does not mean that they can be a substitute for what the government can provide. Sensible of this momentous truth, you have improved your first essay, the Declaration of Independence and the Articles of Confederation. Articles of Confederation was the first attempt at a constitution, and it was a federated republic, and it failed because there was no strength to the central authority. There was no power in the central authority. It was 13 independent states, essentially, with very little power in the central government. And so they decided to give the central government power, real comprehensive power. And that's what gave us the Constitution. Then he says that we formulated the Constitution with full knowledge, deep study, and we believe we have something that's correct. But one of the things he'll say in here is we've built into the Constitution the ability to amend it. So with proper amendments, we know that we aren't going to be completely correct, but with proper amendments and the addition of other laws and so forth and so on, you can refine it and get it to be more correct over time. And it will change. What will be corrected in one time will not quite be as correct at another time, but don't get rid of the basic government structure. That's a bad idea. All obstructions, this is a critical thing, all obstructions to the execution of the laws, all combinations of people and associations under whatever plausible character, GOP, Democratic, you name it, citizens of Georgia, with the real design to direct, control, counteract, or awe the regular deliberation and action of the constituted authorities, are destructive of this fundamental principle and a fatal tendency. He meant it. They serve to organize faction and give it an artificial and extraordinary force, to put in the place of the delegated will of the nation the will of a party, often a small but artful and enterprising minority of the community, and according to the alternate triumphs of different parties, to make public administration the ill-concerted and incongruous projects of faction. You're seeing that today with the GOP, rather than the organ of consistent and wholesome common councils modified by mutual interests. People say George Washington and the founders didn't know what was going to happen with Trump and so forth and so on. They knew. This whole farewell address is trying to tell us, A, they knew, and B, this is what we've determined is really the only way to save yourselves. It's up to you. It's not up to us, because no government, unless you want a dictatorship, no government can give you the kind of liberty we can give you with this republic. Liberty itself will find in such a government, with powers properly distributed and adjusted, its surest guardian. So the fact that we now have a single executive who's now taken successful control of all of the Congress and the courts is exactly what George Washington knew would be fatal. It is indeed little else than a name where the government is too feeble to withstand the enterprises of faction, of a concerted faction of people who are willing to lie and misrepresent and badmouth other people in order to gain power. I've intimated to you the danger of parties in the state. Let me now take a more comprehensive view. So at this point in his farewell address, he said everything he's going to say, and now he's going to go into detail. And what I want to do is just touch on the detail just a little bit to give you some hints, but this detail is really worth listening to or reading. He says the alternate domination of one faction over another, sharpened by the spirit of revenge, natural to party dissension. In other words, he's saying that the reason the parties are there, and I can't stop them from being there. We've tried to talk people out of using, George Washington had no party. They tried to say, don't do parties, and they got parties. But what was driving these parties apart was revenge. One group would choose to try to take revenge on other people that were not in their group, which in different ages and countries has perpetrated the most horrid enormities, is in itself a frightful despotism. So what he's saying is that once you get a party taking over the country itself, even though you might have the semblance of government, you will have despotism. But this leads at length to a more formal and permanent despotism. Goes into that a little bit. Then he says a bunch of things that are, I think, worth thinking about, which he's going to go into a positive framework, and I'm going to try to skip down to where he goes into the more positive. In governments purely elective, it is a spirit not to be encouraged to have governments of a monarchical cast that patriotism may look at with indulgence, if not favor, upon the spirit of party. You just heard Trump say this in the last week. He basically said, I'm really not a dictator, but I'm a dictator. But dictators are not all bad. Dictatorships are not all bad. Come on, guys. Washington predicting it. It's important that the habits of thinking in a free country should inspire caution of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity. By political, he means Patriots of Liberty. Religion and morality are indispensable supports. Notice he doesn't say religion is an indispensable support. He says religion and morality are indispensable supports. He understood. Man claimed the tribute of patriotism, who should labor to subvert these great pillars of human happiness, these firmest props of the duties of men and citizens. He's recognizing that morality is key, but the warning is don't listen to divisive liars. But support morality. He's not saying that if people are having various versions of morality in various religions and so forth and so on, that's going to break the system. It's going to break the system if a group overpowers the the representative government. And let us with caution indulge the supposition that morality can be maintained without religion. Whatever may be conceded to the influence of refined education on minds of peculiar structure, reason, and experience, both forbid us to expect that national morality can prevail in the exclusion of religious principle. So basically what he's saying is that we're not saying you have to have religion. Religion in the society, that's a great source for sources of morality, but it's really, morality is a different issue entirely. But it does establish principles of morality that are worth attending to. Promote then, and now he's talking about education, of primary importance, institutions for the general diffusion of knowledge in proportion as the structure of a government gives force to public opinion. It's essential that public opinion should be enlightened. Everybody should be behind education. It doesn't say science. They had science back then. It's truth, scholarship, all these other facets that allow people to be able to think critically about things. The other thing is, he says taxes are an important source of strength and security for this government is to cherish public credit. But to preserve it, use it as sparingly as possible. Avoid occasions of expense by cultivating peace, not by cultivating war. But remember also that timely disbursements to prepare for danger frequently prevent much greater disbursements to repel it. In other words, but be prepared militarily, because it will cost you a lot more if we have to spend money on a military, as the government has to do that. Avoid likewise the accumulation of debt by shunning occasions of expense, by vigorous exertions in time of peace to discharge the debts which unavoidable wars may have occasioned, not ungenerously throwing upon posterity the burden which we ourselves ought to bear. A conservative view. George Washington is not a conservative or a liberal. He's right there in the center. Read his farewell address. No taxes can be devised which are not more or less inconvenient and unpleasant. And then he goes into things like be friendly to all other nations. Do not get attached to any other nation. In other words, get attached to all the other nations, but don't rely on your government through another government, because that'll produce a variety of evils. Sympathy for the favorite nation, facilitating the illusion an imaginary common interest in cases where no real common interest exists. He talks about foreign influence. The great rule of conduct for us in regard to foreign nations is to extend our commercial relations to have with them as little political connection as possible. So far as we have already formed engagements, let them be fulfilled in good faith. Now let me stop. Liberal intercourse with all nations are recommended by policy, humanity, and interest. And then this is his last statement, and he actually did this. This is what really happened when he left the presidency. I anticipate with pleasing expectation that retreat, in which I promise myself to realize, without alloy, without fooling myself, the sweet enjoyment of partaking in the midst of my fellow citizens, the benign influence of good laws under a free government. In other words, a government that provides my liberty. The ever favorite object of my heart and the happy reward, as I trust, of our mutual cares, labors, and dangers. George Washington, September 17, 1796. My argument is it the truth? I said, yes. He's basically saying, never vote or promote a divisive liar, because those are the guys that are going to get you into real trouble, and they'll come through faction, they'll come through parties. And I can't stop the parties. We didn't want them. They came anyway. So please don't let them lie divisively. Or if they lie divisively, don't listen to them. Or certainly don't promote people to positions of power who lie divisively, like Trump. Is it the whole truth? Yes, I said. This is all yes. What's the deceit? No deceit. Is it intended? Yes. The motivation is to be informative. When I stumbled across the farewell address, I read a lot of the founding fathers' papers and so forth. There's really nothing like this. This is the full picture in the shortest possible number of words. What's the social acceptability of the truth or lie? I think it was a travesty when the House of Representatives stopped reading the farewell address at the beginning of every session. It was travesty when the Senate still does it, but nobody's in the room. Everybody should be present, and the farewell address should, I would prefer it if they used a short version like this, and it should be read and discussed by all the House and all the Senate so that every member actually understands what George Washington actually said, as opposed to what the media says he said. What label would improve the social acceptability? I said basically no label. So I have a case of a divisive lie. I wrote this yesterday or the day before in reaction to, we knew that people like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk could destroy our constitutional democracy. Proof there in Putin's puppets, Trump, Vance, and GOP. Peter Thiel, Elon Musk should watch this whole thing. It's not long, written by George Washington, to see. So I put in this thing we just discussed. And I said, we're going to have a trial on Thursday. And then this guy, Xenophon X, Daniel Fred 42869, which is almost certainly a bot, said, Bob, you're literally too stupid to insult. And so my response to this guy, assuming he's actually a person, is thank you for the excellent example of what George Washington meant by divisive lying and a divisive liar. So if you want an example of a divisive lie, here you go. This guy calling you are literally too stupid to insult, and with no ability to actually have a structured dialogue with him. By the way, he's probably a bot, but that bot was written by somebody, and it was directed at this thing by somebody.
Well, it's interesting. Xenophon, his pen name, Xenophon. I mean,
Yeah,
it was a Greek general who was appointed.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So it just Xenophon. I thought this. So I don't know who this is, obviously. Yeah. Okay, but Daniel Fred. So it used to be that the mark of a Russian bought out of St. Petersburg is that number at the back.
Yeah.
So they pick names of people like Daniel Fred. They make up those names. And then they add numbers at the back to make it unique so they can just run the bot. And St. Petersburg has, according to some books I've read, they have over 2,000 young people under 30 on social media just infusing lies and misrepresentations and so forth, manipulating the American people. And they have whole specialties. So there's one building, this the Internet Research or something like Internet Research Institute or whatever, which is a building in St. Petersburg, a large one. And there are several floors devoted just to attacking the United States. This looks like one of those guys attacking. Now, Brian wants to correct me. So, Brian, go ahead.
I wasn't trying to correct you at all. That's
Oh, okay.
100%. That's 100% correct.
Yeah.
These are called state-sponsored non-kinetic actors.
Yes. And we can give you books to read. Everyone read. To my mind, the best book on it is this thing called, I'm going to use a dirty word, Mindfuck. That's the title of the book. And it's by this guy that supposedly was committing treason, but he had participated in manipulating elections and succeeding in manipulating elections by illegal means, by lies, divisive lies. Gives a whole analysis of St. Petersburg and so forth and so on.
Is there a video attached to that post, or is that just a GIF?
No, yeah, so it is. It's just nothing.
Oh.
It's just zero. It's just shaking his head. Yeah, there's no video. No. This looks like a bot for a million reasons. It very well is a bot that's.
Yeah.
The guy just said, "Okay, hit the key, and it will automatically send this thing to somebody." He knew my name, my first name, which was really interesting. I guess it's there though. So I guess that's the deal. So this may have been something the bot did. I have no idea. The code to do these is trivial code. Any idiot could write the scripts that are bots. I'm sorry, but any idiot could do it. And if you want me to teach somebody how to do it, it'll take me about 15 minutes. I'll show you how to do it and give you 5 languages to do it in. So here's your case of a divisive lie that's meant to manipulate. It's meant to basically make people think that I'm an idiot and what I said there was not true, whereas I actually believe every word I said there was true. Now, it's my opinion. I'm perfectly happy to have a trial about it. I want to go through each of the jurors. I saw that most people basically agreed. So if you want to keep it short, if you have something specific to say, or even non-specific, but please do. Juror 1? Is there a juror 1? Juror 2?
Yeah, that's me. Yeah, obviously I've read the address and it's I like his style. It's very moving in a way. It's very well composed and he's saying obviously good things, but I couldn't help thinking about Socrates, who was also a soldier as well, and Athens and the Peloponnesian Wars. And I wondered if, for example, the continuing wars with Britain had gone very badly, whether Washington would have ended up being tried.
No, they all knew they were going to be hung.
Instead of being lauded as the great hero.
No, they were. Yeah, I've actually read enough of the history here that the founder, some of them would not have been hung. Probably, we don't know. But even Ben Franklin knew he was going to get hung.
Yeah,
who was loved in Europe. Okay.
Oh yeah. Oh, I don't mean hung by the British, hung by the changes that have in the American political world, just as it happened in Athens for the tyrants in order to beat the.
The argument is from people like me is that's what we just did. We did it after 250 years as opposed to what Athens did. So, but they actually took a couple. I think they took 300 or 400 years. I can't remember how many years it was, but they survived as a democracy for a while, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I mean they started the democracy. I can't remember the date, but then Sparta invaded and put in the oligarchy. But then that fell, and democracy was restored. And then they killed Socrates, the first casualty of that. And then they hung on for a while. I don't know the dates exactly.
Yeah, but I think they did hang on for a while. So this was one of the big examples that the founders used to study. The schools back then, according to what I've read, high schools and elementary schools had taught history in a real way. In other words, it was a big subject. They didn't really have a lot of the other topics that we have. A lot of these founders were very well educated. Percentage of the population was very well educated about the history of humanity and governments and so forth and so on. And we need to do that today.
Yeah. was interesting. I went to a school. I was of the first generation who did sciences in the school, because up until that point, it was all just languages and classics. And in fact, they taught languages using the philosophical works of these people. So you got to know this stuff anyway as you were learning the linguistic features of these languages. Yeah, but none of that is happening today. No.
That just will take a whole nother hour or 5 hours. So juror 3.
That's me. I agree with it. And I think he was ahead of his time, or his work is timeless, whichever way you want to put it. But basically, never vote for or promote or listen to a decisive liar.
It clearly was a realization on his part, and probably several of the other founders, that no government could be constituted that gave people liberty while at the same time being able to control what divisive lying could do to the government. And so he's reaching out to everybody and saying, you need to pay attention to this because it's going to happen. And when it happens, you can lose everything if you let the divisive liars who are divisively lying in order to gain power run the system, because you have enough of that and the system will fall. And there was no question about it. He's very clear about this. You just have to get the use of the old language and the fact that he was educated in British English. Andrew, I still think the British educational system is superior to the U.S. education. I know that y'all don't.
Maybe once. I don't know if it is true now.
I don't know.
I think my big bugbear is the module, the educational module, which the US system is modules and you can't, it's not integrated.
Yeah. It's junk. I so hate what I see, I can't even tell you. And I'm a friggin' psychologist who knows what this is doing to the minds of the kids. I can't stop it because there's money in not stopping it.
Yeah, it's me. No notes. Absolutely no notes. I have nothing to offer. This is accurate. This is well put together. I agree.
Thanks. Juror 5.
Hi, correct. It's me. I also agree with everything what Rob was saying about, because in government there needs to be trust so that the nation can be inspired and motivated. Otherwise, let's make an example like in South Africa, there's mostly corruption that's going on, and the people don't trust. There's no that they don't trust the government, what's going on in the government itself. Thank you so much.
South Africa is not alone in this. There are, I would say, the majority of governments around the world. If there are 2,000, I think there's 2,000 of them. This includes little tiny things. But it's amazing we have as many governments as we have that are viable republics still. But it's just like Plato said, you fail into an oligarchy, which fails into a dictatorship every time. Juror 6.
I also fully agree. Like, I have an incident today, like whereby government failed us. Like, I'm also from South Africa. Government failed us due to corruption. And now what I've listened to what the moderator stated, where it says, I feel that everyone should be present to hear what he wants to say. So in that case, there was no one present. It was only me and this person. I don't want to mention names, but only me and this person, in whereby the government was involved, but he keeps on putting the person who is busy doing wrong, but they are putting the credit on him. So thereby, I wanted to have everyone present to hear the full story, just to get clarity and to get more evidence. But yet again, government failed us.
I really believe that this is just me. I don't really know South Africa. I know some of the history and I have friends, so I might know more than you think I know. But I really believe South Africa is a country that can educate itself out of its problem. And part of the reason for that, it's going to really take what, for example, y'all are doing in your part of South Africa. It's going to take the people getting to the point of bringing back education, or at least, and Andrew said the right thing. If they're doing it the way by modules, by some stupidity, it's not education. Education can be done right. And I have faith that it may take 50 years, but for South Africa to educate itself out of this incredible problem it's got right now, which is all exactly what you just described.
Hello, everyone. With what you said, and I agreed more with what he was saying, that I think George Washington was literally ahead of his time, because he did warn us on the dangers of deceit politics, as much as he didn't use like modern words to advise us, but he did. And he was also against the divisive leadership. Thank you.
Divisive liar, yeah. Yeah, so I hate the word divisive, but I just can't find a better word. And I know there must be one, but so Jure.
Greetings, everyone. I do agree with the stance the plaintiff took. In essence, the markup doesn't misrepresent Washington's stance. It stays faithful to his principles. The only caveat I would say is that the phrasing simplifies his broader philosophical warnings into one specific takeaway.
Yeah, that actually confused me initially when I was first started studying lying, and I first looked at George Washington's farewell address. I was confused. I actually didn't get it. I didn't understand what he was saying. And it took me actually writing that first summary before I realized what he was saying, that it actually completely flowed, and it was one brilliant statement after another brilliant statement after another brilliant statement, and how it hung together. It took me probably close to a year before I felt like I understood it really well. It took me a month to write that summary, not full time. I had a job. Then I wrote the shorter summary. By then, I had a pretty good handle on what he was thinking. And I think it's not true that he was ahead of his time. I think he and most of the founders all agreed. This thing that he wrote was not written alone, in the sense of, didn't just write it and then give a talk. He wrote it and he solicited the help of some of the other founders in certain parts of it. Many of the founders definitely read it and knew what he was doing, and then they published it to the United States as his farewell address. So there were a lot of people who understood this back then. It's crazy that history repeats itself, but history is repeating itself right now. So this is good. I thought I would bring up one other. So this is my sponsored trials. We're almost there. This is all of the trials that I've given, and you can watch the trials. That's what we're doing right now, the videos. Since I started doing trials on my medium papers. Let's go back to page 1. Let's hope that page 1 works. So there may be a bug in this. I've been figuring out, yeah. So there's a little bug here. The case dates, you're not tracking the names correctly, so you have to do a refresh. It'll get fixed, but it's a minor bug. This is a place that if you're talking to people who want to see what the trials could be, here's a bunch of trials they can watch, and using the most current versions of the system and so forth. And I believe this path is this is a place to see the trial log and a bunch of trials.
Yeah, but we can't see that list of yours, though, can we?
Let me show you how. So if you go to your dashboard,
yeah,
and you look down to the trial that you've just been in, the sponsor is Robert Thibodeau.
Yeah.
Click on that and you'll go to this page.
Ah, okay. Okay, got it. Excellent.
Yeah, so this is all you have to have is a trial that has a sponsor in your dashboard on it. It will allow you to bring up the sponsor page. And I think if you're just a member and you type this URL in, truthcard.net/sponsor Thibodeau, it will bring up the page too. There's no restriction on bringing up this page. There may be a restriction that you have to be a member. I want it to be as open as possible. This sounds good. So we'll have the trial next week. I was shooting for doing this in under an hour and I failed miserably. I apologize. I'm going to really work on making these things under an hour. So are there any other issues, questions, and so forth? Hearing none, I'll see y'all next week.
Okay. Bye, everyone.